Morning, I'm Kevin McDermott and I'm part of the CLD team in Aberdeenshire. I'm the Community Development Manager. I'm just going to give you some of the background to participatory budgeting in Aberdeenshire. The title about this is More Than Money. It's not just about the money's the hook, but it's actually about democracy. It's about civic renewal, it's about people having a voice and having a say, and that's certainly our experience in Aberdeenshire. So, as I say, I'm going to do the overview and talk about the approaches that we used in 2017. The Aberdeenshire history, PB kind of started 2016 where the Health and Social Care Partnership came up with, which I thought was a significant amount of money at the time, £200,000 for PB. There was other kind of PB processes before that, so our drugs and alcohol forums, we've got 3 of them in Aberdeenshire, and they've always had £28,000 that they distribute, and I would have seen that as a PB process because that's predominantly people in recovery who are the majority in those groups. But this was the first time that there was a big PB process in Aberdeenshire. So 2016, 200,000 split between 2 communities, the 2 with the highest levels of kind of deprivation in Aberdeenshire, so it was Peterhead and Fraserburgh. And then the following year, the Health and Social Care Partnership put that money in again, so it was a further 200,000. Area committees and community planning partnerships topped that up a bit. There was regeneration specific money went in as well. And so, you know, that increased the pot from 200 to 326,000. And then we also got money through the Scottish Government scheme, but that wasn't for grant funding, that was capacity building round about the PB process in Aberdeenshire. So that was where we were. And in 2017, Aberdeenshire is split into 6 administrative areas. So each of the 6 areas had a PB process and had some funding allocated. So the first 4 that you can see up here, they all used the big vote model, where projects came together, where there was a big event, people voted. Some of them, well, they all included digital voting as well. But you can see they were different. So there was a different amounts of money in each area. There was different scales. Some had large projects, small projects. So these were defined by the local steering groups. So I won't go into those processes because that's what the main presentation is about. But the other 2, people did say we wanted to try different ways of PB and different ways of engagement. So there was 2 other models. There was a poster presentation model, which was done in one community. And then there was a mini public done in another. So I'm just going to briefly touch on both of these in terms of the whole thing about democracy and how people were involved. So the Geary process, which was the poster one, that was the same as everybody else. A steering group was formed. The steering group set the criteria. People came forward with proposals. And if those proposals met, they were part of the process. And basically, what people had to do was produce a poster. They were given a size, produce a poster about your group, and that's the information that was going to go out and display. And that information went out to communities across Aberdeenshire. It was a bit like outside the supermarket, at a gala day, at an event, to get to people that way. So there were 16 bids, so it ended up 69% of the people got funded. And I think that's one of the things about PB, it is the competition element within it. But the groups who weren't funded still got support with their projects as well. So it wasn't as if it was just winners and losers. But there is that kind of, I don't know if it's jeopardy, whatever it is, there is that thing within PB where there are winners and losers because there is not enough money for all the projects. So here's one of the posters, a men's shed. So that was the extent of information that people had to make their vote on. So that was a wee bit about West Hill Men's Shed. This one here was a recovery group that pulled together a poster. Now, the PB process, all the processes were externally evaluated last year. And one of the things that came through from that research, can't quite see that on the screen there, but it was some people saying that they found the poster thing much more accessible to them as a group, that they would have been scared getting up to do a presentation. But the poster thing they felt was something they could do, was manageable. And it also had the effect of, because it was taken out and about, it increased awareness about what the group did in the first place anyway. So more people became aware of what they did. But in that model, people had, I think it was 16 posters, and they had 5 votes to allocate to the projects that they wanted to fund. So that was one approach. So that's that approach where probably relatively small amounts of money, relatively small amounts of information, and people making a decision based on those parameters. The other one I want to flag up is a mini public process, which this evolved from our CPD Alliance, the North Alliance. In 2014, we had a conference, and Oliver Escobar from Edinburgh Uni came up and did an input on democracy and dialogue and deliberation, and people really liked that. So we decided to follow up. The North Alliance put in some more money. Aberdeenshire Council and Aberdeenshire City Council put in money, and we ran a joint training session for 16 practitioners, 8 from the city and 8 from the Shire. But the deal for that was, if you come on this dialogue and deliberation course, you've got to go away with a real project. You've got to go away with something that you're going to deliver. So this was the example of the thing that was getting worked up at that session. We thought we would try too many publics. So I facilitated one in Fraserburgh, and Roisin Marr from the Marr Area Partnership, she came up with the idea of the Marr Mini Public. And I can remember when Roisin was talking about that one at first, I didn't quite get what she was talking about in terms of a mini public for PB. But what she was talking about was almost like inverting the process. So kind of going out, first of all, to get lots of people aware of the project, and then to get a small group of randomly selected local citizens to the people who looked at all the applications and decided which ones they thought should be funded. So that was the model there. So although I'm talking about this, I'm not taking credit for this. This work was led by the Marr Area Partnership and Community Planning Partners. But because we'd been on the course together, Roisin had shadowed us on the Fraserburgh Mini Public, which was the first one, and then I had come in and got involved in the deliberation stage on this one. So they did the groundwork of going out to meetings like this, speaking to projects, speaking to groups and saying, can you work up a proposal? We've got this amount of money, here's the outcomes we want, can you come up with something? And 5 proposals were developed in that area of Strathdawn. We then, with the money from the Scottish Government, we got a market research company. We said, right, we want to run a mini public. We want, as randomly selected, a representative group of local residents to come and take part in this. And you'll go and recruit them by door knocking. Now, if you've been in Strathdawn, some doors are half a mile apart. I mean, it's very, very rural. There's a few small towns. So although we wanted 14, they ended up with 11 people. And I think that was really good, because it was a diverse group of people. People were paid an incentive to take part as well. That was part of the process. And they were asked to commit to 2 sessions. So there was a Thursday session and there was an all-day Saturday session. And it's this thing about dialogue and deliberation. A bit like we were talking about the educative process earlier in Dundee, about people understanding what was in front of them and having enough time and space to do that. So the Craigforth research kind of flagged up. I mean, I've been involved in 5 or 6 mini publics, and it's the same message in every one of them I've been involved in. People liked the process. They felt it was a supportive process, although they sometimes can be a bit apprehensive when they first come in. But they felt they were able to express their views. They felt they had enough information, but they weren't overwhelmed with information. But the way the process works is they get to ask questions and decide, you know, do we want someone else to come in and explain this further? What other information do you want? So people had sufficient information. And I'm just contrasting. The poster thing was a poster with limited information that you voted on. This was actually about detailed information in front of you and having a dialogue and debate and discussion about that information. So there was a different level of conversation. At the end of it, people felt they'd made a good decision. So they were confident in the process. And I think that was down to the diversity of the selection of the people around the table. Because in every one that I've been involved in, when there's been a meaty issue, what people finally decide is not what they thought they were going to decide at the beginning. So that dialogue process and deliberation, because they hear, if you get the composition around the table, they hear voices they might not normally hear in the community, and they hear perspectives, so that changes. They don't just look at it from a narrow perspective, they look at it from a wider perspective. And people's local knowledge was brought to good use in that in terms of the proposals as well. But this is the bit for me that sums it up and links into the next bit of the presentation and the one earlier. And it's this thing about people didn't see themselves as the type of person that would get involved in something like that. So it was that whole thing about folks saying, oh, I really enjoyed that. And I didn't think people like me got a chance to look at things like this and make decisions. And that to me is the whole thing about this participatory democracy side of it. It's normalizing that thing about as a citizen at different times, you will be invited to get involved in things. And it's normal. It's not an elite that does it. Everybody does it and everybody can do it. And I was struck with one of the Dundee slides this morning because when we did the first mini public process in Fraserburgh, it coincided with the PB process. And we went to that one And given that the team in that one had spent 3 days looking at an issue about community building, we didn't then want to go into the PB process and say, here's what we've decided, do you agree or not? Because people hadn't had the space for that discussion. So we asked a different question. We asked the question about, do you think that folk like yourselves, if you're given the time and space to look at a complex issue, will make a reasoned decision at the end of it? And 95% agreed or strongly agreed that that was the case. So that was a message we were getting over, that citizens have got belief in their other fellow citizens to be able to make good decisions. So that was just 2 examples of kind of the PB approach in Aberdeenshire, but it's that whole thing about democracy.